Okay, everybody, DK here with Mr. V Amps, and we've got a Fender Blues Deville 410-inch Alnico speakers in there. Should sound pretty good. It's road worn. I don't think I have to tell you that. I think these are probably 90s era, but from what I understand, the one input jack is messed up, and the reverb is clanky, but that was when it worked, because now I guess it doesn't even turn on. So I think before we attempt to turn this on, we'll just pull the back off and take a look for anything blatantly obvious inside. Okay, so we got the back off and we're doing the blind squirrel scan here. We're just looking for anything blatantly obvious, anything burnt or charred or something. And not as such yet. Start over there. Do 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 do. And the blind squirrel sees something. Got that hanging down. This is one of the two leads from the power cord. And it looks like, let's see, shrink wrap, shrink wrap, shrink wrap. Somebody changed the power cord on here and used one a little bit thinner than the original, and it can push and pull through the strain relief, and it must have been plugged into the wall. Somebody gave it a little tug and out it came off of the switch. So we could either put a thicker, fatter power cord on it, or we could improvise. And the fuse doesn't look blown. I don't see any reason we couldn't improvise, because this is an easy solution. Okay, so the solution to make this easier is we're going to pull the cord up an extra few inches farther into the amp than it needs to be. And then we want to make sure it can't pull down, and the cord is just a little too thin that it wants to run through the strain relief. So we're going to put a really tight little zip tie on it, and that should be an economical solution that prevents that from happening again. Okay, now that said, I suppose we should check the other issues that we have had reported on the amp, but I think at this point, since the fuse isn't blown, it's plausible to attempt to turn it on and see if it explodes. And ever since that carbon video, you guys are probably all scared I'm gonna try to jump scare you again. Okay, power light. These power tubes are 5881s, which seems appropriate for this type of amp, which is emulating the old school bassman, the 410 bassman from the 50s. We're trying to emulate that. So these two preamp tubes are all glowing beautifully and brightly. This power tube is easier to see the glow than it is on this one. It's just where the filament's located. But let's take it off a standby and see what happens. Let's make sure the volume's down. See, drive and volume are down. Reverb will turn down just to be safe. And okay, off a standby. No bad sounds yet. Okay, turn it up a little bit. Now we get a little bit of hiss. Little bit of jingle jangle in valve number 1. That's a high gain valve. We seem to mystically have just like got a ton more gain when we just fiddled here, but these pots probably, yeah, these need to be cleaned. That needs to be cleaned. clean the pots and switches. The other one that gets our goat sometimes is these big resistors, which usually supply the lower voltage. That lower voltage thing is more common on the Hot Rod Deluxes rather than the Blues Deville. And these seem to still be soldered down okay. Poking at them doesn't cause any disruption in the force. So I think we need to clean the... Let's listen to the reverb briefly, just to hear that it works. That's a very echoic reverb, and I think the owner would prefer it not be quite as spacey, and there's actually an easy fix for that on the flip side. So let me just go through and do a routine pot cleaning, and then we're going to check out that input jack. Ooh, I was twiddling knobs and you guys couldn't see me. I didn't have it focused. I was looking over here. Oops. I gave you the worst camera angle ever in this narration, where all of you were probably screaming at the camera going, "Hey dum-dum, we can't see, we can't see, we can't see." So, sorry about that, y'all. Yeah, we poke around a little bit here. I'm a little more brave because I'm wearing vinyl gloves. Normally one would poke around in here with a wood stick, but technically my fingers are isolated from electricity, and I'm poking around with, you know, a finger. But you can see over here, like right in this area, there's some op amps and some solid state circuitry, and that's usually these two beefy resistors here handle that droppage. This tube right here, that 12AX7, that one's a little janky, and he actually talked about doing 12ATs in it to make the gain a little more controllable. So clean the pots, move forward. Okay, despite this jack being loose, it doesn't. That was like the nut was loose. It doesn't appear to be messed up. It appears to pass signal just fine. The owner was telling me, you know, that he couldn't really use one, and it's got a ton of bass and just a ton of gain. I mean, just boom, it comes through like a truck, and that's just because of the impedance of, you know, that one. So we were talking about putting a little bit lower gain valve in the front end. Let me see what we can do about the reverb. Let's just plug in the guitar and do a little sound checking. Okay, so for our guitar we have a Rickenbacker, and I'm still wearing gloves, so I'm gonna have the worst dexterity ever. But anyway, we'll turn the volume off of 0 here. We're just gonna go one up. Definitely has a lot of bass. I mean, a lot of bass. And like I say, if this is supposed to be bassman-esque, I can understand that. There's a master volume here. I think that only affects the drive channel, though. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, so when you're on the quote-unquote normal or clean channel, that's the hot input, and here's the not so hot input. That sounds okay to me, so I think we're making a lot of progress, but apparently that reverb's got a really long tail on it, and he'd prefer to have a shorter tail on the reverb, so I think we could do that. Well, that's interesting. Our reverb tank says sound enhancements on it. I was expecting it to say Accutronics or Accubell or Belton, but it doesn't. Okay, so if we flip it over, we can see that's a 4-spring, you know, with 2 springs here, and they're loose. They'll go a long time. There is a little easy trick into calming these down, and turning a reverb with a long tail into one with a shorter tail, and it's really, really easy. So let me show you how to do that. Okay, see this stuff? This is like polyfill for speakers. See how fluffy and loose it is? You just take a little bit of something like this, and you can slip it underneath the two springs. It doesn't, you don't want to have it too thick, or you don't want it to actually impede the springs from moving, so I'm going to have to trim it back. But you just want it to just enough that it touches the springs, or that the springs will hold it in place. So that's too thick as it is. But we're going to cut that down, probably maybe make it half thickness. Just enough so that it touches the springs and helps to slow them down a little bit. This is a real simple, easy to do thing. Anybody can do it. I can do it. You can do it. And if you don't like the way the results are, you didn't waste a ton of time doing it. You didn't waste a ton of money doing it. And it's easy enough to undo. So, yeah, that seems to more or less have done what I want. I just want it to just barely be touching. So I'm going to fidget with that a little bit more. Okay, so that's what I went with in the end. The springs still have a little bit of bobble to them, but they will sort of drown out and put some of their energy into our piece of foam, and that should reduce our overall reverb. So we'll test. Okay, and here's the results. If you remember, it had a really, really long tail. Now it has a short tail. Turn it up a little bit more. You'll hear what I'm talking about. Like I say, the trail is a lot shorter now. So, you know, if you want more tail, you just take a little bit of that material back out. If you want less tail, you put a little bit more back, or, you know, whatever. Take more tail, take it out. You know what it is. Stop the springs from moving a little bit. In fact, I think I'm going to actually take that back just a little bit more and get just a little bit more jingle jangle on those, because I think I took it a little too far. Okay, I'm a bit happier with that. What you'll find too is to adjust that where you put it. In this case, the input side is over here. So if we put it on the input side over here, then we have a little bit, you know, we still have more spring down here to be picked up. The farther I slide it this way, it is also going to reduce the overall effect. So, you know, a little thinner and a little closer to the input, and that's what we want for this case. Okay, so this brings by the non-eventful conclusion of our video, I suppose. The only thing we're going to do left is the owner here wants a little bit less gain on the amp, because that front end really was hot and really bassy. So instead of the first two being a 12A-X7, I found a 12A-Y7, which is, you know, old school what Fender would use. That's already way mellower, so that's one option. I also have the 12A T7 or ECC81. That's okay, that's a good option. I have a couple of those. And then we also have a 12A V7, which is not nearly as commonly thought of, but that one will work too. So we can try those in position 1 and see which one Buddy digs the sound of the most. But that's about it. So thanks for watching. We had a pretty straightforward one today. I tested all the tubes. These are 6, you know, and what a new tube tests between 8 and usually about 8 and 9 is typical. So 6 is still plenty healthy, but it would start to flop it when it got to a 4. But yeah, I think we're rolling. All right, thanks for watching. Have a great day.